What I've gone with is a 20-watt floodlight with a PIR, a stuffing gland mounted underneath. So let's get that smashed out. Yo, morning, welcome to the channel. So today I am back at a job though. We completely renovated this property and we're now doing a little bit of an alteration. I know, mind-blowing. So we're now going to be putting in, because it's now winter, every man and his dog wants to have some more lighting. So we're outside lights, that's what we're talking about today. So we are going to be showing you how to install the complete installation for fitting a new security light down the side of this house. So as you can imagine, it is now dark from sort of 3 o'clock. So we're now pitch black as we walk through and try and get into the doorway. So we can't see, so we're now going to be installing a new security light up here. So the landscapers are in. They are taking an absolute lifetime apparently from the customers, so which is not great. So it's taking a long time for the process. And obviously when the customers are finally in this house, it's a little bit dark. So we need to change that. So we're going to show you how we're going to install a new floodlight up here. We're going to get that sorted. We have completely rewired the house, which is an absolute dream. So we've now done it. So now we know that we've got a new board on here. We've got full RCD protection, we've got surge protection, so we're nice and easy, ready to crack on. So we also are going to need to be fitting a means of local isolation for the security light. So what we've planned is in this garage space, there is actually a loft space. So there's a loft hatch there, so the great news is I can get all the way along. So we're now going to be running in a new feed, and it's basically the floodlight is going to be going around about there on the opposite side. So let's get the kit out. So at this point is when you look at what size of light do we need. Now, obviously we haven't got that much height. So what I've gone with is a 20-watt floodlight with a PIR. So the PIR is that, so which is basically a motion detecting sensor. So we've got full range of movement on there, so we can angle it more towards the gate or towards the door, depending on which one it is. Now, obviously, if we had a much more higher roof line, we'd be fitting it much higher, because obviously the higher you get, the more range of detection we've got. Now, with the client, we're not quite sure whether he wants the light aiming more towards the door or more towards the gate. So what we're now going to do is we're going to fit this mounting bracket, which is going to allow me to tilt the light one way or the other. So we're going to fit it in the neutral position right now, and as the client goes through the installation and as he starts using it, he'll alter it to suit whatever his needs are. Not mine, his needs. So what we're going to first do is going to go through all the bits. So we're going to be using a Wiska 308 box on the top, because then that will allow me to make all the joints that are accessible, because all of these lights come with a pre-wired cable on there, which then we can't then cut it all open and open the rest of it. So we're going to wire that into the Wiska 308 using a stuffing gland, which there should be one in here. I think I put one in earlier on. Oh, I did. So that is a stuffing gland. We're going to then put that into there or the side, whichever one I decide to do. And then from there, we're going to use our 1mm cable, because that is all we need on this, 1mm twin and earth, and run it internally in that loft space back to our feed, which where we're going to interrupt the feed by using one of these. So we're going to use the fuse connection unit. We're going to downgrade that in there because these ones come standard with a 13 amp fuse in there. We're going to downgrade it to a 3 amp, which is more than enough. And we're going to use one of the soft pattresses. Now, the reason why I've moved away from more of the hard sort of Bakelite style is because anytime anyone goes anywhere near them and taps them, they tend to break. But with the softer ones, they don't. You can hit them with a hammer and they're pretty good to go. So let's get into that loft, have a look, and start getting stuff sorted. And I'm in. So once I'm at that point, so I'm through into the loft now. Now I'm going to use some rods to go through into the loft space so I can see, because at the minute I'm not going to have a clue where anything is. So we're going to use these super rods to push into that loft. Okay, so the rod's in, so now I need to jump into the loft and figure out where that is. Then I'm going to, before I go in the loft, I'm going to attach the cable down here, because as soon as I get up, grab it, I can then pull the cable through. Right, absolute bonus. I've hit the jackpot. The rod is literally by the hatch. It's just here. Oh, couldn't have got much better. Whew. Brilliant. Cable's here. Oh. The cable's now up into the loft. I've got plenty, I think. So the new plan for the location of the fused spur. So we've got obviously the garage socket here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a fused spur by the side of it. I can then label it up. I can then bring the cable for the lighting down this trunking here, so it's all nice and neat. Go straight into here and just spur off, because that garage circuit is on its own. It's a 16 amp radial. It's the perfect setup really for it. So we're going to get on that. We'll get the cable back to this point. And then what I'll do is we'll do the outside stuff first, get all the light all in place, all mounted up. But that is how we're going to do the power side of things. Okay, so we've got the cable brought back down to here. So we're going to put Patras right next to that, fuse spur on, so we're really good to that point. So obviously put the loft hatch back now. So now we're going to get on with fitting up the whisker box. So we're now getting this whisker box all mounted up. So what I've done is I've drilled through, so I'm now going to seal that as well. So obviously we've got a seal on top of the whisker box, just drilled through. Now I'm not going to go drilling any higher, because if I do, I've got a risk of knocking the top brick, because essentially that is the last brick on top of there, and I've just got the soffit on it. So we're gonna get that mounted up, and then we're gonna get the whisk stuffing gland mounted underneath. So let's get that smashed out. Okay, so we've got the cable brought back down to here. So we're gonna put Patras right next to that, fuse spur on, so we're really good to that point. So obviously put the loft hatch back now. So now we're gonna get on with fitting up the whisker box. So in the top of these, they're all rubberized anyway. So we've got the cable coming in this top entry, and now we're gonna use this bottom one here. And now I find it's easier to get the stuffing gland mounted up first before I obviously put it up into the top. So technically you don't have to use a stuffing gland, because these are, I've got like a rubberized seal, you can do that. But what I like about using the stuffing gland is that you can actually clamp onto the cable and make sure that it's nice and tight. So obviously as you tighten that up, it will clamp the actual flex anyway. So gonna get this siliconed up, get that mounted up. We're just gonna use a bit of clear silicone on there. Nothing, doesn't have to be nothing jazzy. So let's get that all fitted up. Okay, so the cable's all prepped, all ready to go. So we're just gonna go and get some Wagos, put them on, ready, and then we'll get this light mounted up. Okay, so we're now coming to fit the actual light up. So we've got our whisker, we've now got our Wagos on. So they're all sorted. I'll show you a little bit later on what they actually do. So we've got the mounting disc. So what I'm gonna do is mount it onto here, which again will allow the light to be angled that way or that way to see what the client wants. Because it's really cold today, the marksman's not that happy. So we now used a marksman spray, which will give me, basically it fires a bit of green chalk onto the brick. So you can see that. Let's bring you and show you. So it fires in, obviously a little bit of green dust on there, a bit of paint. And then these are the actual Wago connectors. So there's various different sizes for different ranges of cables and amperages and all the rest of it, but that's what we're using today. It's nice and simple. So again, if you notice, I've not fixed into the top brick because if I start drilling in here, the chances are going to knock that up. So we're going to drill into these three right now. So we're using the plugs. So these are the Duo range from Fisher. So we're going to put those in. I find these the best plugs on the market by a country mile. So these are the 6mm. So we're using a 6mm SDS down there to drill those holes. And then we're going to use the actual screws provided on here because these are like pan head screws. So those screws there will fit flush. Because what I've done before, being a full disclosure on these, when I've used a different type of screw onto that plate, it's actually split it because it's just put too much pressure and force because the plugs hold so well. It's ended up splitting that disc, and that is something you don't want. It would help if I had the right size bit in. So it's really important, like I've just said, using the actual right bit on these, because if you don't, you'll just round the heads off, and obviously in the future, if you need to take this down, it's not going to happen. So it's laziness. Yes, I could have just fired that in with, I think this is a PZ2. Yeah, PZ2. And that's obviously the wrong one. It's just a standard sort of Phillips that we need. So now we're going to get the light built up. So we're going to use the crush washer on there, which will obviously lock it in place. Very fingers and thumbs here. So we'll mount that up. In effect, what we can now do is angle the light that way or that way, depending on what the client wants. But what I'm going to do now is, first and foremost, I'm going to get my cable into the whisker box, and then I can tighten it up. But like I say, we're going to keep it in the neutral position right now because we don't really want to be messing about too much, because until the client knows what he wants, he might want it facing all that way, but we're going to leave it in neutral, and obviously we'll show him how to adjust it all. So one of the things I've just done is I've just swapped the way that bracket sits, because before it's actually sitting so the light's actually hanging quite a long way down, whereas I've just done it that way and it will now give me that extra bit of height. So I think that'll be the right way of doing it for this installation. So fingers crossed. So I can now get this mounted back up. It just gains a little bit more height. Nothing crazy, but just a little bit. Let's see if that works. Yeah, that's better. So I know it's unconventional, but I actually think that'll be better for this installation. So we'll get that mounted up. So one of the other things that I think is important to do is to make sure that you've got the cable all clipped in. As silly as it sounds, even if it's a small area, just get some clips in. It just looks so much neater. Right, let's go get the right clips. Okay, outside light, all done. Just a few little settings that I need to do once I've energized it, but let's go and get the inside bit done. So I think that's going to be the best way of going about it. Am I going to be limited on some of the detection? Next to nothing. So we're now at the board. Now we now need to get our power supply for that light. Now you can clearly see that we've got the power actually still here at this socket. Now the beauty of obviously this board is that we are not going to cause any disruption for the rest of the house, because the client is here, he's working on his house, he doesn't really want all the power out. So if we had a split load board, chances are it's going to interrupt what he's doing as well. So obviously we don't need that. So we've got the garage socket, so we're going to isolate that off. Obviously I've got no power now, that's gone. Now, if the board was in a separate location, I couldn't see it, we need to lock that off. Now use a lock off device, which will basically put a actual lock, mechanical lock onto the RCBO, which will stop anybody else being able to energize it while you're actually working on it. But because it's all here, I don't need to do that right now because I'm not going anywhere. Me and you, we're gonna do this right now. So I've got the pattress mounted now. Now this brick is not as level as the other one, so it's kicking it out slightly, but it is what it is. I'm not going to mess about too much with that. So we've now put our pattresses in. So I've drilled a hole through. So we're now going to use a bit of 2.5 mil to match up for obvious reasons, because if we don't, that's going to be pretty stupid. So we've also drilled our hole. So this is our feed for the light. So we're going to connect this end up and we can get that socket put back in. So we're using Earthshore cable on this end. So Earthshore, if you didn't know what it is, it actually has the earth sleeving built into it. So we're going to get that fitted and then we're going to get the fuse spur mounted up and downgraded. I thought I'd show you the difference between Earthshore and standard cable. So Earthshore is this one here. So as you can see, the actual cable is already pre-sleeved, so you don't have to mess about. And this one is not. So you've had to go and get the sleeve in for this one. Now, it sounds silly that, oh yeah, how much time does that save? But genuinely, I thought I had some in my pocket. I didn't. So then I've had to go to the van, which is like there, which I know isn't far, but if that was parked around the corner, I then had to then get it, take it off, put it on. So if you're doing absolutely tons and tons and tons of second fix, it really does surprisingly save a lot of time. I know it's petty and some people might go, oh yeah, you're just being jobs worthy, but for me, after rewiring many houses now, completely in Earthshore, it does really has had a massive effect. It's nice and simple, and that's the way I've done it. So another little thing is obviously to make sure that you're doubling up your ends. So if you can see there, so if you just use a single bit, you don't double it over, you have less contact area to go in for your terminals. So if you can see in there, if you just have the single, it's quite easy for the actual cables not to make proper contact in there. So always double them up, and that way you'll get a nice, clean, consistent fitting. Okay, the fuse spur is now in. So what's left to do is take the 13 amp fuse out. I don't know if I can get it one-handed. So we've got the 13 amp, which is actually a standard issue fit on these. Just pop that up there for a second. And we're going to install a 3 amp, which is more than enough for this installation. So what's left to do now is we need to get the garage turned back on, which will then energize these sockets, as we can see now. So we're all good to go, and now we know that when we turn this on, this will happen. So now illuminate the light. Now this light has got 3 different color outputs. It's got warm white, cool white, and daylight. So as it stands right now, we've now left it in the setting, so obviously to set the sensor up. So we've got a minimum time. Now obviously for the gate, we'll now see when that picks you up, obviously in what area, but obviously I'm going to stand here now for a minute while it shuts off. Okay, so the light's gone off. So if I walk forward, the sensor should pick me up. There you go. So I think that's a spot on for us. I just need to now adjust the lux. So obviously in the daylight, we don't want that to be coming on. So that's just a little dial on the back, which should be nice and straightforward to do. So we'll rotate that round. And then on the back here, you've got lux, sensitivity, and you've got your time. So we're going to turn the lux one all the way round from the sunlight to the little moon. That way, I had that the wrong way. And then that way, it should be all good to go. So I'll just nip these 2 up, and we're all good. Ready to go. Last parts of the job, we've just labelled up the floodlight so nobody else can just turn it off and forget what it's for. Also, little things about keeping your standards high. Now, I obviously bang on about this all the time, but now I've got all my screws nice and level. Now, whether you want it vertical or horizontal, but it looks so much better than having them all over the place. And also, I know if somebody else comes back and messes with it, chances are they're not going to be the same. So that is pretty much all the install sorted. What's left to do now is make sure that as I walk around here, it doesn't activate the light, which it doesn't, so the light doesn't come on now as we're walking through in the daylight, because we just adjusted that lux as we've just shown you. So hopefully you've enjoyed this video and you've learned something from it, and obviously we're into that season now, so if you are looking to get your security light fitted like this one, just follow these simple steps and you can get the job smashed out. Right, so that's it. That is the end of the job. So hopefully you've enjoyed it and you've learned a few things about the process behind installing a new security light from complete start to finish. So hopefully if you've enjoyed it, make sure you subscribe. Link is in the corner, turn your notifications on, and don't forget, every week we do the GHC Weekly, which then highlights what we're doing throughout the rest of the business. Yeah, it's a very, very busy one. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, and if you have, like I say, leave your comments below, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you in a bit.